All right, this is EUphoria, the podcast all about the secret romance between Martin Deficio Lunga and Trevor Quickshot Henry, filled with all the juicy, intimate details you can't get anywhere else. I'm your host, Daniel Drakos, the OG Deficio X Quickshot stan, which I've been told either means stalker / fan or is a reference to the Eminem song. Hopefully not the second one, in which case that'd be very messed up and very dark. But don't worry, boys, I won't be sending you any letters anytime soon. But welcome, Quickshot. We're available on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud in case you somehow forgot or aren't listening on one of those three, which would be impressive. Good on you for figuring that out.
That would be pretty cool. Maybe someone is actually...
pirate radioing it.
Yeah, or they wrote everything down. They're reading it off to someone. That would also be pretty cool. Before anyone instantly quits the podcast because we don't have a pro player here, I will let you know that Quickshot is actually a former pro player.
Well, I mean, as pro as you can be pro.
He is a pro player, therefore we did bring a player. We stuck with the EUphoria
hold
thing.
on. If you're not familiar with the South African Call of Duty scene, are you really an esports fan?
Do you guys actually know the name of the team that I played for and I managed and I ran? Now,
Quickshots.
The reason you don't know it and the reason that it's not super publicly advertised is it was called BFB and it stood for Big Fat Bastards. So we didn't exactly take ourselves the most seriously.
We didn't get the big non-endemic sponsorships.
But, yeah, TLDR is 15, 16 years ago now. Holy crap. Played in South Africa. Actually managed to get to DreamHack, managed to get to Antwerp Esports Festival. Got my ass handed to me by Dignitas and H2K's former, Call of Duty squads. They were actually like really good back in the day.
Them, we could have been watching BFB.
Exactly.
Like the worst team in EU LCS.
But that definitely was not going to be the future career, unfortunately for me.
But a pro player nonetheless. You guys can't complain.
Thank you. So this is just to defend Deficio's...
it's because, on Twitter, I did this really awesome tweet, in my opinion, where I introed you and Maxlore.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're with this person who's just perfect. Everything about him is great.
Shucks.
And I'm like, you guys already guessed, it's Quickshot. And I said, we also have Maxlore. So I was like, that's funny.
Except there was only one part of that tweet that wasn't true. Maxlore wasn't coming.
That's the whole thing, right? So I thought it was funny as hell. So then Drakos writes to me instantly. He goes like, we don't have Maxlore. He wasn't supposed to be on. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so I delete it. I write a new tweet. I put grammar errors in there, like a couple of them. So I delete that tweet again. And then I finally get the third tweet out saying, Maxlore's not even supposed to be on. And then people started replying, being like, oh, but you don't have a player then. Where's the player? We want a player. And I'm like, we have Quickshot.
Yeah, thanks.
People didn't really get too excited about that one.
Yeah,
wow.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great start to that.
Great, excellent, yeah.
So where are we going next?
First you claim
we're
he's a pro
done.
player.
This is it.
Well, no, so
He's a pro player.
our producer Phil had a good idea coming from some people who came out as listeners and said, we want more introductions. And apparently there's a lot of people here who might not be familiar with 2014 League of Legends, which is probably fair. There's probably new. So Deficio, do you want to give a similar TLDR intro? Maybe not of your Call of Duty pro history.
Well, I want to get another one from Trevor as well regarding his League of Legends career. But my intro, 2012, I unsuccessfully tried to become a pro player in League of Legends. I got mad. I retired myself and said, I just want to create a team now. So I created the first professional full Danish League of Legends lineup, the one that became Copenhagen Wolves and with Björksen on and so on. A couple of weeks before the qualifier for the very first LCS, we needed a support. I never played support before. But I figured...
It showed.
Yeah, I could learn Nuno and Lulu because they were pretty easy. So I spent 2 weeks learning that. We qualified for the LCS, even though we were never supposed to.
That was in Warsaw, right?
I was in Warsaw. Yeah, you were casting.
I have a story about this later.
So we got into the LCS. I got to play as a support for a year. It was fun enough, but I was kind of hoping to do other stuff in esports behind the scenes. So when I had the opportunity, I got to do the World Final Season 3 at Staples Center as a player on the caster desk. Doing pick and ban phase. I was only allowed doing pick and ban phase, then I got kicked off. It was all Jat's idea. I got it. I sat it in my NIP jersey. I looked really dumb. Anyway, after that, apparently it was pretty good. So Riot said, hey, maybe you should try become a caster. And then I started practice casting with Quickshot and D-Man.
Yeah, it helped a lot that I was a color caster at the time. So it was a pretty big quality bump.
Yeah, the competition wasn't very tough.
Pastures for Deficio.
I think I beat Quickshot in popularity when I couldn't speak English, and everyone hated me, but most people kind of hated.
You and I definitely came from the dark days.
Yeah, it was
of
bad.
casting history.
But anyway, that's how I became a caster. And I just want last part to this. I know it's been more than a minute. Now that we talked about us not being popular back in the day, I remember going into 2015 when Joe Miller and D-Man had announced they were not gonna move with us to Berlin. We sat in a hotel room. We looked at each other and said, okay, so here's the situation. Quickshot, you're going to go to be a play-by-play, which is what you always wanted. I'm going to be the only color caster. We're only 2 casters now. Reddit doesn't really like us.
Yep.
This announcement is going to go down really well.
Yep.
And we're like, yeah, Joe and D-Man are gone.
We were quite literally shitting ourselves. Like, it was a very scary time. But fortunately, I think we came into in the right headspace. And we're like, okay, we just need to get as good as we can.
We could only go up.
Exactly.
We could literally only go up. In the end of that spring split, which was actually the very famous Flash Bear Slap, Trevor Kiss Me kind of stuff, I think we got out on the right side.
Yeah.
And that kind of built the foundation for the Quickshot Deficio thing as well.
Also, really set up the kind of the history of Trevor yelling random ability names, which is
Hey, that might come now.
It was a claim to fame. I mean,
there you go.
That's
dude.
actually what got me my job. So you heard South African. I've been involved in esports, like watching and playing and competing from probably like 13 or 14 years old. I'm 31 now. So it's a really long time that I've been involved. I was actually watching Joe Miller and D-Man for about 8 to 9 years before I got to work with them. And then all of the magic of the famous shoutcaster was thrown out the window because in my very first year, D-Man and I shared a hotel room for 3 months. So there are some lovely memories of us eating Ben & Jerry's ice cream in our underwear, playing League of Legends in a hotel room. It was a special time.
There you go. That's bonding.
But the reason that I ended up like getting hired in the first place is I stopped playing League. Stopped playing Call of Duty. My brother introduced me to League, and he stopped teaching me. I couldn't really get the game, so I started learning by just reading like Mobify guides and Reddit things. Learned all the spell names, and I was the first guy to start using spell names actively in commentary. And then Reddit threads started saying, well, how can this random South African guy know all the spell names, but Joe Miller and D-Man don't?
Ooh,
and that was my claim to
throwing
fame.
shade around.
Back in 2012.
And you were solo casting.
Solo casting a lot. Got hired, got picked up for LCS, but they basically said, hey, look, we have D-Man and Joe Miller, like the best play-by-plays on the planet at the time, basically. So you have to do an analysis and color casting. And
you
show,
know all the ability names, so clearly you're prepared.
But like, the show was so much younger, it was so much less evolved, and that was in 2013. So since then, just been on the LCS and managed to get to play-by-play 2015, and that's really when things started to pick up and take off. So quick history of me and casting in esports.
He actually casted me before I went full-time pro, losing to M5. And by losing, I mean getting absolutely destroyed.
Was that in the 4PL event, or was it Go for LOL?
I think you actually did a couple of casts with
'cause
us. The one I remember specifically was the DreamHack qualifier.
Yes, yeah.
We got to the quarterfinal, and then we were like, oh, who did we play in the bracket?
Dude, that stung
M5.
so badly because I got to do the DreamHack online qualifier for the entire event, but did not get invited to the event.
Oh.
So it was like, you're good enough for online, bro. And I was like, oh, it was like one of my first rejections when I was still freelance.
There you go.
God.
Drakos, what's your story?
Oh, dude. My story is very grindy and not as nearly as aspirational as the two of you.
I mean, yeah. We are also grindy. I just want to say we also work hard.
Whoa,
I didn't mean to react to your thing. I was
Mind
say
your
we
ego
also
on
grind.
the way out.
No. I didn't mean
not
that.
Saying that you
I didn't mean
not saying that you worked hard. This is like you guys
It
always
was the grind part.
I had a lot of lateral movement because I applied to be a shoutcaster with Riot around the era where Zyrene got hired. I applied in that like same era of hiring, and I put like 20 hours into my cover letter and application, and like 30 minutes into my shoutcasting sample. Really good letter. To this day, proud of that cover letter, proud of that application. Shoutcasting sample, the worst piece of garbage I have ever let any human being look at. So my priorities were a little backwards. I was a little young and stupid. Gave up on shoutcasting for a bit, started writing articles, started doing graphic design, was a talker, got on a podcast. Via that podcast, met someone who gave me an opportunity to shoutcast, kept casting, worked a job while casting. So I had this ridiculous schedule where I'd work at a coffee shop from like 6 a.m. to noon, go home for like 5 hours of free time, and then cast the LJL like nap, cast the LJL from like 11 o'clock to 5 a.m. and then go to work and repeat the cycle again. It was a good time. I remember those days fondly. Eventually cast like an IEM. Eventually
The IEM was the big one, man.
Deficio noticed me there and he goes, man, this guy's a trash color caster, but he doesn't look bad on camera and he's got a nice voice.
That was actually pretty much the summary he gave me.
Yes, it was. I know it because he reminds me every time I talk about my origin story at all. He's like, yeah, I remember you not looking bad and
sounding good.
You said a lot of dumb stuff, but it worked out okay. So yeah, I got my start. Here I am, years later, sitting at a desk with you three gentlemen. Also very disillusioned to the impossibly talented color casters. I didn't live in a hotel room with either of you for 3 months, but let me say, I thought you guys were like these always like regal, very formal, like good speakers.
On camera, baby.
I know, yeah, but now
anybody that's watched at least one episode,
slap my ass on camera.
At least one person that's watched EUphoria knows that Martin is not regal and neat.
This didn't exist when I came.
I got buttons here, man. I got buttons on the side.
He's fancy. Look at the buttons.
It's actually when I hear your stories, and often I think about how a lot of shoutcaster came into it, like. So you mentioned the grind, and I feel like I might have been one of the few who's managed to kind of jump past the having to grind freelance with no viewers and have to kind of like build yourself up from the start. So I'm obviously very lucky in that case.
That's because you're a former pro player.
Sure.
So that was your grind, right?
Yeah.
For us that didn't have the pro
you had to do that thing.
Look, I would have done that if I could. I was just bad.
Dude,
so.
my freelance, I broadcast Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday nights for the better part of a year, between 6 and 12 hours every broadcast. I looked for every single cup or tournament that I possibly could. I had a friends list that was purely just challenger players that were like playing in every single Go for LOL on Sundays. And I would beg and plead people just to let me spectate their games so I'd have content to cast so that hopefully somebody would watch.
I remember this collegiate day. It was a 10-hour day and my co-caster had to dip. And they're like, are you good solo casting for 10 hours? It's like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like no big deal. Now I'd be like, no, are you kidding me? That's insane.
Yeah, we're broadcasting live. What do you expect me to say?
But see, that's why whenever people reach out for feedback on how to become a caster, I can't give you the story that these guys can in terms of where to start. I can be like, you should become a pro player and then be on camera and retire.
Also, like, we get asked this question a lot, and I've given so many people the same answer, and we've made so many posts. If you're asking, your head is in the right place, but instead of asking us, just start casting. Like, just start doing it. Put samples out there. Get out there. Because, like, I think every one of us as casters gets that question pretty regularly.
Yep.
And the answer is always the same, which is literally you have to do it. Like, I know it's uncomfortable and it feels weird to put yourself out there when you're, like, maybe not 100% confident in what you're doing or that you're not going to get any viewers. But I will take the dude who, like, Captain Flowers is a great example of this, of a guy who literally just did it because he loved it all the time with, like, not nearly like you had this grind and this steady rise to success. I had this grind and this steady rise to success. Captain Flowers went from like 0 to 100 in the space of 6 months just from grinding. And I think there can be a lot of similar success stories if people just put themselves out there. It is difficult for sure, but it's possible.
I agree.
True. All right, end the podcast.
So for context today, we're going to have this is going to be a lot of trips down memory lane. We'll talk about our best and worst casting moments, kind of some history in the EU LCS, the best finals, the best teams, experiences, personalities, and we'll round it all out, focusing in on the semifinals that are coming up this coming weekend. It's Vitality versus Schalke and Fnatic versus Misfits. So a lot of history, a little bit of what's coming up if you're interested at all in going back down memory lane, or if you weren't around for maybe what we could call the glory days, the wild, wild west of League of Legends esports.
You know, I was thinking about that, and I think if you have fond memories of previous years, I think it's acceptable. I think you can call it glory days. But I think this year might go down as a glory year in retrospect. Like, it's super exciting. But when you think this is what, the 6th season in a row now, this is our 12th final coming up.
Yeah.
It's insane. And even more insane than to think that both Shocks and I have actually been on the broadcast since day one of EU LCS. So I definitely feel like the grandpa when I walk around and speak to the new players and new teams and new casters.
It's crazy. All right, the first thing I want to start with, though, is best and worst casting moments from any time period, anywhere at all. You can start with your best or your worst. Now, I know you guys, you probably have some easy bests that come to mind. I actually don't have an easy best, but I have a really easy worst. So who wants to go first?
I can start with one of the worst ones. I'll put in two here. One was my opening day. You could ask for that.
Yeah, but I didn't want to
I can talk and lift the water for you. So it is week 1 of the 2014 Spring Split EU LCS.
Okay, hold that thought because you got to put the water back now.
Okay, I gotta put it back. I can still talk and do this.
It's not prop comedy, gentlemen.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so week 1 EU LCS is about to start. 2014. There's a new caster in town. It's me. I'm sitting next to Joe Miller, and it's my first cast ever outside of the couple of practice casts I've done with Trevor. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really know what I was supposed to talk about. So I just said to Joe, just ask me questions, and that's it. So I didn't bring anything other than whenever he asked me something. And I obviously couldn't explain anything in terms of my language. I could obviously just talk about the game.
It sounded like he had a potato in his mouth.
People couldn't understand it. I remember the cast ended, and I was like, all right. I felt okay. I opened up Reddit and Twitter, and it's just like, I think it was like 5 posts or something already on Reddit of just being like, what is this? Like, get this man off air. Like, what's happening here? And my Twitter just like, I got so many followers because people wanted to follow me because I was bad. So they
wanted to flame you.
Yeah, they could flame me. And I was just like, wow, okay. This makes me very confident for the next cast. I guess my opening day of casting was definitely my worst memory.
Also, shout out if you're a Deficio fan, and if you have messages from like 2015, 2014 on Twitter where you flamed him, please like clip those and be like, I'm an OG Deficio fan, and send them to him.
I actually would love to see that.
Someone linked me the old Reddit thread that was created saying I was in a coma, but then the nurse turned on EU LCS and I heard Deficio and I had to wake up and mute the TV. Yep. Someone linked me that one from like 3-4 years ago, and I was like, yeah, that was Twitch chat.
They definitely did the rounds.
It did.
Yep.
It was moved on. Also because, let's say, the casting team weren't exactly the guys who didn't banter.
It also didn't help that I think every broadcast day of every game of every week for about 2 years, people would remind Deficio of that he was a failed pro, he was one of the worst supports, his team never won anything. There was a lot of insults.
It was a lot
around.
of it.
And it's quite funny because you actually see that, like, that joking.
I was a middle of the table support. I just want to add that.
I remember maybe like one champion.
Me and Freeze, we were good botlane.
But I remember the jokes. There was even conversations about whether or not like D-Man hated you and stuff.
Oh yeah, because he kept burning.
There was so much like banter, but like online, you couldn't tell it was joking.
This is the best part. If you make a joke at someone else's expense on cast, they're like, he hates him. How dare he do that to him on air? He hates this guy. He doesn't want to see him ever again.
That's a fake laugh. He doesn't enjoy this. He wants to get out.
What was your second one? You said you had 2.
Well, that's a recent one.
Wait, that was the recent one?
No.
Now there's a recent one.
I have a recent one. I'll try and think of another third one because bad casts are funny now when you look back. The moment when you and me were doing the Fnatic Splice game. You remember this split? It was insane, excitement.
Yes.
Fnatic.
Yes. Elder Dragon.
And yeah, we kept doing the percentages of like, oh my God, Fnatic, they have it. It's in the back. Then they start losing. Splice are coming back. And like, it's super hype, you know. It's going nuts. And the Elder Drake, you know, Broxa takes it. And you ask me about percentages, I think. And I just yell, it's 90% Splice now. They got the Elder Drake. They're going to push down mid. And I just talked about that for like 20 seconds. And then I stop and I look at Fnatic. I'm like, why are they glowing? Like, what's going on?
Broxa stole it.
I'm like, oh no, I even said Broxa took the Elder Drake. I had to like try and like take it back and like say I'm so sorry. And it was like in the hypest moment of the game. That's how you ruin it.
Trevor's like trying to catch you, like, but guys, like real quick before the game ends, I didn't notice that.
I was in disbelief. I was sort of like, wait, is he really saying that? I'm like, he said Elder. I said Elder. And it's like, I didn't actually understand what was happening.
See, that was definitely in recent memory one of the worst casting moments.
I mean, I go back to 2013 Worlds, also in Staples. I was hosting the analyst desk. And Super News is the biggest show I've ever worked on. And it's a world final. And during the pre-show, we had a video package that was going to run. And the prompt is like rolling. And I don't know, I just completely brain farted. And it was like, you know, break line, run video, then carry on reading. And I just didn't stop. So I basically was like, yeah, and of course we've got this video coming up about something or other. And after that video, we're going to carry on. And I just kept speaking. But the production team obviously were like, they heard the cue, they ran the video. I kept talking. Nobody turned my mic off. The production team got super panicky. So they cut back they like actually broke out of the video. By this point, I've now realized that I've messed up, and I stopped talking, and I'm not being funny, and I'm so sorry if you're listening to this and not watching on YouTube, but I have this face. And they genuinely cut back, and then I'm sitting on camera for about 5 seconds with this awkward face, like I f***ed up, and then they went back into the video, and that was like my biggest like first year mess up, and it haunts me to this day. Absolutely
The sour lemon face.
Yes, the sour lemon face.
Mine are much simpler because I come from the era where like production teams are ready for talent to mess up. They like had Trevor in 23. They're ready. They will cut a talent off at a moment's notice. Like never again will we see this Trevor Lemon face on broadcast. Now mine was IEM Katowice last year. So H2K versus Flash Wolves. It's like almost entirely a Polish crowd, right? Jankos comes on stage, people lose their mind. Every time H2K does anything, people lose their mind. Every time H2K does anything, my energy is at a 10. I am alive. Yes. I am feeling it. Every time Flash Wolves does anything, the crowd does nothing. I do nothing. I am so in tune with the crowd. It's like the most biased cast of my life. Vedius is getting all the hate and no one cares that I'm doing anything. But the win moment, and this is like a lesson that I've since learned from. But my win moment when H2K's Nexus goes down is, oh no.
Yeah. Oh no.
But that happens, dude. You just get so wrapped up.
Well, this is the first time I had cast in front of such a clearly biased crowd for H2K, and I just was so not ready for it, and like nothing else made sense to me. In that moment, the only thing in my head was, oh no, and it's the only thing I could say. There was nothing, no other words that could have come out of my mouth.
Last year All-Stars, I forgot the LPL coach's name.
I remember that as well. You paused.
Dude, I panicked, right? Like it just, I've never really lost a name like that before because I love doing the stage intros. So we end up introducing all the players, all the teams, and I'm going through it and it's like, bam, 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 bam. It's like player. And the name just goes. And it was the very, very, very last coach and LPL were the last team to step onto the stage. And I just stopped, dead silence. And I was just like, Now, if you go back and you listen, you can hear I have so much energy, so much power, right? All the things. And I was like, Firefox! Like, it's this panicky burst.
I'm so happy you hit the right name there.
And thankfully, I didn't say the wrong name. Thankfully, I didn't miss an app. I go backstage and I'm convinced absolutely everybody's heard it. I'm convinced everybody's going to be like ripping me off or whatever. But you're so focused on other elements. You're waiting for the games or you're watching the teams or whatever. The only thing I got is this all caps message from Becca, my wife, going, lol, you forgot his name. You're so shit. And I was just like, thanks, honey. That's exactly what I needed right now.
I think that's the thing. And I'm sure if anyone who listens or watches has production experience, any kind of live broadcast production experience, I'm sure you notice a ton of mistakes that a lot of people don't, because now that I've worked in this production environment, you see everything. When the camera cue's a little wrong, when the graphic comes up a little late on any broadcast you watch. And so I see it now a lot more in like, you know, regular TV in a day-to-day. When someone doesn't know their line and they get that panicky look in your eyes, you recognize it immediately.
Yep, exactly.
It's also interesting because when you watch sports broadcasts, theirs are often so much simpler in what they're actually trying to set up in terms of the casters and so on. Like it's typically like there's a host and there's a couple of, you know, pro footballers or retired ones, and then there's the two commentators, and that's it. That's basically it. And like the Danish world broadcast for the World Cup I was watching, like it's the same shot of them sitting on a couch talking about the games, and then cut to the commentators. You see the commentators for like 2 minutes, and then you watch the game, and that's it. So there's a lot less room for actual production mistakes in that, but they still do it. Like they cut to the wrong things. The thing is,
there's difference between like little production errors and then just blatant mistakes. So one that I don't really talk about a lot, and it is probably my most embarrassing mess up ever.
Was the first one?
Was the first time we were doing Worlds in Korea, and I was also hosting the analyst desk, and we were doing these like read tweets from fans moments.
Oh, you read the name wrong.
And yeah, but the thing is, I didn't just read the name wrong. It's what I said afterwards that was bad. So in the tweet that came up was this like Korean lady sitting with this little poodle eating.
Oh no, I remember that.
Eating dessert.
Oh no.
And the tweet was along the lines of, I'm sitting with Mochi, my dog, eating mochi and enjoying Worlds. And I don't know why. I said the words, please don't eat your dog. I said those words.
Why did you say that?
I read the tweet.
No. Is
And
the
in my
name was the
head,
same or what?
yes, she called a dog Mochi.
Okay, I get
The
it now.
thing is, the words left my mouth, and I'm like, you
tried to catch them.
Historical connotation means this is disgustingly
Oh,
inappropriate.
and
No.
I sat and I hit the button to talk to my producers and the production team, and I went, I know I just messed up. I'm like, I don't know why. I don't know what. That's not funny. That's just, it's so dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have so much regret. I think back, I can see the tweet, I see the graphic, and it just, yeah, it haunts me. It'll haunt me forever.
That was definitely
Yeah, that was
worse than my
terrible.
first cast.
I was gonna say that's rough. I was thinking my next one is we had a telestrator segment back when we did duo stream, and literally like every moment of your life as a caster was a part of duo stream. You're like, so you're going over here now to do this thing that we just made up and decided to do to fill 2 minutes of time because we have no idea how to do this 2-stream thing.
Yeah.
For the first few weeks at least, we got it down by the end.
Yeah.
And I just remember finishing my telestrator. I felt confident. I felt good, and then it didn't leave. And after like 15 seconds of it not leaving, rather than like continuing to speak or just holding still, waiting for the camera to cut away, I like held up my hands and went like, and to this day, it's brought up to shame me by you're my boss now, Trevor, but my boss's boss now.
I have one last one. It's not about casting on air.
I'm starting to remember a lot of different.
Okay,
I know.
yeah.
The thing is,
Keep
when you've
going.
done a bunch, but and this was a little bit closer to home. I farted on Deficio's mom.
Yes, he did. I didn't think you were going to bring that up here, but I actually remember that.
The old studio in Cologne, the caster desk, the camera would face us, like, dead center, and the stage was behind us, and the audience would be looking at the stage. So if you're looking at the Euphoria set, that would be the LCS stage.
Yeah.
The fans would be sitting
down
directly behind, like, Martin and I.
Kind of like how the NA setup is now.
Very similar, actually. Yeah, very similar. So
Well,
we
the
had
fans are even
headphones
closer
on,
to you.
and you're in your little world, and I didn't realize it. I'm just like mid-game, and I'm rah, 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 and I'm like, rah, but I have no idea. At the end of the day, Mon's like parents and brother and whatnot come backstage, are hanging out, say hello, all very friendly, and then Mon just pulls me aside and is like, so my mom said you like farted in the game and she heard it. You like farted on her, dude.
He literally sat at the last row right behind the caster desk.
So she could talk to her son.
So she could be close to
and
her son.
appreciate
Yep.
the cast.
Yeah.
And then-
so that was an awkward moment.
That was definitely an interesting one. There's actually been a lot of also where it's kind of your fault, but it's also a bit production fault. Do you guys remember when they rolled the wrong Primetime League clip
Of you swearing?
of me swearing?
Yes.
It was after the moment where I'd sweared a lot, and I've been kind of...
So just for setup, you'd sworn a bunch on broadcast.
And then I was like, I'm going to stop swearing.
The way Primetime League worked is we, as EU, we would like pre-record our segments and then we'd send it to the North American production team that would like edit it all together. So they just added the rehearsal clip.
Which
of
was
him.
obviously a million.
Wait, wasn't that the first time they ran Primetime League? That was the first time it just
It was
opened?
early, but I don't think it was the very first time.
Actually, it might have been one of the
Really?
first ones.
It
I think
might
it might have been
first
because we had to do an intro. You, me, and Shocks being like, "Hey, we're here from Europe. We're going to be part of Primetime League, and we're going to talk about the upcoming season." But the whole thing. And wait, you said something, and then I started by going something like, "Yeah," and I say something wrong, and I go like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They ran
Ugh.
no,
You
this
know,
was definitely like one of the first episodes. 'Cause I remember watching the stream.
"Yeah," and I
From the start of the stream, I was like, what is this show? I was excited about this as a league viewer. It starts, it runs, you swear,
and
and then it stops. And then like 10 minutes later, it starts again. And I was convinced it was like a viral marketing thing to get because like no one cared about Primetime League up until that moment because people didn't know what it was. But in that moment where Deficio sweared and everyone messed up, people were like, what is this show?
So apparently, from what I've been told by the producer, who was called Ben Winter, when it aired, and he noticed, like just before I said my little swear word, he noticed this was the wrong clip, and he tried to run to like get to the people to stop it, but he didn't do it in time, and then it just goes like me saying it, and then they just instantly smacked the something went wrong, and Timo stands there going like, we'll be right back. And I just saw, because I remember then my Twitter, obviously, because it was pre-recorded, so I didn't really pay attention at first. But then suddenly I just start seeing the tweets coming. I'm like, no, I was going to do less of this. The whole point was I was going to do less.
I also remember the jokes at that time because I think Joe and Lee or whoever it was also was saying that if you swear again, we're going to fire you.
That was Joe. The first time I said it, which was like...
I said, if you swear again, you're going to get fired.
Yeah,
and that was actually like a thing that got picked up. And people were like,
kept doing
oh, Deficio swore again, he's going to get fired. Like, he's so donezo.
kept swearing, man.
I actually don't think I've said the F word on broadcast. I've said shit, but I don't think I've said the F word.
I've said the F word
a few times.
Probably at least 10.
Yeah, you're double digits, I reckon.
I'm definitely double. I actually had one like this year.
I got told off by Carmack at IEM because I said Cloud9. They made me. I can't remember. They're playing so impressive and like holy shit, they're so
holy.
good.
I remember you said holy shit. That was IEM.
And Carmack came over and like really gave me a talking to, and he's like, you should not do that. And
I think I've dropped a lot of subtle shits. I've definitely dropped at least one F-bomb.
pretty
that.
epic one.
Yeah.
It was beautiful if I remember.
It's removed from the history books.
Yeah.
It's removed from the history books.
No,
Oh,
it's
that's
still
right.
there.
Actually, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, dude,
I saw a clip the other day where it was still there.
Now it's a stutter. That was beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice.
Dips.
Shall we turn to good moments? Because I still don't know if slapping you on the ass was a good moment or not.
I think it
Great
was
moment.
a great.
I mean, it's a magical moment, but I look back and I'm like, why did I do that?
You don't remember?
No, the thing is, what I do remember is we have this like this free camera, you know, the ones that films the player reactions and stuff like that. And our director said, "Hey, the camera's going to come from behind you and I'll look at the cast."
It's always an awkward pose to stand in.
And Martin is a bit confrontational. Is like, "Well, this is weird. Why?" And he's like, "So can I bend over and show off my ass like I've been working out?" And there's this like awkward pause. Nobody says no, and he's bending over.
I was looking like it was looking like I was actually paying attention to the screens. I wasn't just standing like that. You know.
He said he wanted to show off his ass.
Yeah,
There's
but
nothing
I
to
wanted
do
to look
with
like
And to
I
be
was.
clear,
paying
we were
attention
hitting
to
the gym
screen.
good in that era.
Yeah,
that was a good era.
I had some good squats in
And
there.
while he's leaning over, I get the countdown. They're like 5, 4, and I'm like, I'm gonna slap it. There's this voice in my head. This little red devil just pops up. It's like slap his ass, and I really slapped his ass. Like there was no holds barred, and you were just like, well, okay, well we'll go with it.
That was not what his face told a very different story, which was ooh. It was like a high quality moment. And God bless Jack. If you're ever watching the EU LCS and we have a particularly weird camera intro or camera angle or caster intro,
that's Jack.
That's all Jack. He's our director. If he could like get one of those surgical cams that they stuff down your like stomach, he would literally have a camera come out of my mouth in an opener just to turn around and look me in the face so I could introduce something. Like this man would do it. If
I would
anyone
volunteer.
would do it.
Like I would be
I would
down
be
for
down.
that.
I would be horrendously uncomfortable.
That would definitely be something new. That's for sure. Great. I mean, you probably won't do it again. I think that's pretty safe.
I mean, yeah,
It won't happen again.
maybe. I'll never say never. I'll never say
The
never.
ante continuously gets upped, and I think we're all worried about what the next step is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been on pause. The bets have kind of overtaken us doing new dumb stuff. I feel like.
Also, we've got a creative outlet in ReadyCheck, so that definitely helps with bets.
That's
Yeah.
also true.
But what would be one of your favorite moments?
My favorite moments. So easy one is 2015 spring, the final, Fnatic Unicorns of Love. During that year or during that split, a lot of the sentiment from the community was that Europe was like super low level, and it was just like, how can Unicorns of Love, a cheese team, just how can they make the final? It's so bad. And people weren't. I don't think people were too excited about the final before it actually started.
Yeah.
But once it started, and it was 5 games, and there were actually like a really entertaining games to watch, and people like really got into it, and so many people started watching and caring about it. During that cast, a lot of good things happened. There was the Trevor kiss me moment, which was completely random, but it ended up being super successful. Again, definitely not planned. I just saw a pip of a couple.
I choked. Like, I didn't know what to say because the little picture-in-picture came up.
and then they started
and the
making
couple,
out.
like, hardcore, aggressively making out. Like, really doing it. And my brain froze. So the two of us are sitting casting. These two are making out heavily. And I'm supposed to say something. And I'm just like...
See, I thought production did it on purpose. It was like a kiss cam kind of thing. But I'm like, wait, why would we suddenly do a kiss cam? We've never done that before.
What?
So it's like, I have to say something.
You're telling me that the two that there's no way that was an accident. Like the amount of effort it takes to tip that up.
No, because it was actually just 2 people at first sitting and watching the game, but they, as soon as the camera pops up,
Yes.
they started kissing.
Like, legitimately, there was
They
this,
actually-
like, this
yeah.
cognizance. They were just sitting really comfortable, nice. And then
So they showed
oh,
them.
yeah.
And then they just go nuts, you know?
Shout
and
out
I'm
to
just,
them. There's a camera. Let's go.
well, he doesn't say anything. I'm like, at first, I'm like, oh, this must be on purpose. But then I just see it just gets pulled down. And I'm like, I should say something.
Do you know what? I actually don't think we've ever found out who that couple was. We're going back to Madrid. Like, we should actually find out who they are.
It would be cool if they're there.
We should find out who they are and like recreate the scene.
Anyway, that was a moment.
Double date. That'd be great.
That was just random improv of like, I gotta say something here. Trevor's not saying a word.
Yeah, I choked. I had no
React to
idea. I
what's
just looked at it.
happening.
I was so taken aback by...
Tom Kent wasn't in the game yet.
Yeah,
There were not as nearly as many opportunities for humor as there are now.
Not. That was a great moment though, because I didn't think at first it was that funny, but then seeing people's reaction to it was great. And that final was the first final me and Trevor casted together, because he obviously was a caller before and then he was play-by-play. And the reception after that split and after the final itself was so positive around us and EU LCS that I will look back at that moment as like kind of the turning point of my career.
It was for me too.
And I think, I don't think I'll ever forget the Madrid final itself.
It's actually crazy to look back for
That
you
was-
guys, especially like how much negative perception there was and how huge
That was the split. I mean, that story that Deficio was talking about, where from 2014, 2015, we moved from Cologne to Berlin. German and D-Man did not join us. We were the only two casters at the beginning of the year. And then that was the split that turned it around and got everything going positive again. So it was awesome.
I can't believe that was so long ago. I do want to get a little bit more into the history. You brought up that final.
Well, you guys have no good moments?
I guess I do. I should get one good moment.
Get one in there.
Yeah, one in there. My favorite... Oh, God, what was my favorite moment?
Nuke Duck rap video.
Nuke Duck rap video is pretty great. Actually, as far as highlight career moments go, I really enjoyed the Nuke Duck rap video. The semifinal, one of my favorite casts I think I've ever done. In hindsight, it was actually probably terrible, but I still remember very fondly, was the H2K versus Splice semifinal. It was a tri-cast. And it was the game where the top lane matchup got ran back-to-back 5 times in a row.
Was it Nar versus GP?
It was Nar versus GP, and by the 5th game, we had literally nothing to say about it. We're like, why do they keep it? And like game 2, we're like, Prowler needs to change his draft. Game 3, we're like, I guess it works, but maybe Prowler should consider changing his draft. And by game 5, we're like, you know what? Just pick,
it doesn't matter anymore.
Just pick him the Nar or the GP. And like, I loved that series itself was so funny and like so serious and intense and like actually really serious, but also just every pick man was like a break of comedic relief, because you knew that despite like wildly varied success, that it was gonna happen again. That someone was gonna pick Nar, someone was gonna pick GP. It was gonna get run back every single time.
I have one tiny one before you go history. 2013, when I was color casting, and spell names were the main thing, I had to break a bad habit that I would rhyme spell names and lines and sentences. And one of my most favorite, most memorable moments was an Elise ganking a Lissandra in the mid lane. And for anybody that is a legacy viewer and watcher will know that the way I yell the word cocoon, especially in game when I'm excited, in my accent is particularly loud. So anyways, the cocoon catches Lissandra. She casts Glacial Tomb. We were calling the E the Glacial Path. The Claw of Doom. She was trying to land ice shards, but it went And I remember I was casting with D-Man at the time, and he made fun of me for rhyming so much, and I just kept doing it. I look back and I go, why? Like, this is bad. This is not good commentary. But I just couldn't stop doing it. And I actually had to like train myself out of rhyming, which was pathetic and childish.
Interesting.
Remind yourself, folks, that Trevor Quickshot Henry is the original rap god. That it goes Eminem, and then Trevor Henry, and then the new era of rap god.
Exactly. The Drakos and Deficio and DJ Cowbell.
DJ Cowbell.
I'm not a
DJ Cowbell.
rapper. I'm a DJ. It's important to highlight.
We the best podcast.
It's gonna be in there next time.
We're gonna get it.
So sad we didn't get it in.
History time. You brought up Unicorns of Love versus Fnatic. What is your guys' best EU LCS final ever? The one that got you the most excited?
Easy. Fnatic Origin.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
I think I enjoyed Fnatic Origin the most, but the Fnatic UOL with my first play-by-play final is more memorable. I distinctly recall Power of Evil's Varus in the mid lane, losing my mind to it, how excited I was with it.
And how people flamed it, and then LCK started playing
exactly. And it was kind of a turning point for PoE, where he sort of got respect because of that performance. So
Bear
mine is
slap.
definitely, Flash Bear Slap as well. Which
Was that in the final or in the semifinal?
It wasn't. It was semifinal.
Ah.
Yeah, it was semifinal.
So we could rewrite history here. It was in the final.
But I definitely enjoyed that. That was my personal favorite.
So
It's hard for me not to give it to Fnatic OG personally.
I mean, so Fnatic OG, a lot of it also just comes down to when I think back how the whole final ended up happening. Like, so many things had to go, in this specific direction for it to be a thing. So Fnatic was the best team in Europe, had won so many EU titles, and their star player, biggest name, was Xpeke. Back in the day, season 3, season 4, even season 2. Heck, even season 1, he won the world championship with them. He leaves Fnatic, creates his own organization, his own team, and they go from challenger, qualify for the LCS in the summer split. They enter the summer split with this lineup that's super hyped up, but people are still a little bit unsure because Sven, or Niels as he was called back then,
Yeah.
17-year-old rookie, we didn't fully know what was going to happen there. Mithy had been out of the scene a bit and he had returned. So there were still a lot of questions, but they end up obviously being really, really good. And we get this path where we go into playoffs and they end up on opposite sides of the bracket. So we're like, wow, we can actually get Fnatic versus Origin, Xpeke and SOAS versus the old team they just left to try and beat them and take the number 1 spot in Europe from challenger to first place, all that kind of stuff. And then we go to Stockholm, where Reckless obviously is playing on Fnatic, and he's Swedish, and we get 5 games between them. We get Reckless Pentakill.
Yeah. Was that the Tristana one?
It was the Tristana Pentakill. We get Huni versus SOAS, where Huni plays the rework GP, and then doesn't do too well. SOAS picks the rework GP.
Obliterates.
And
Runs it
no
back.
one hyped SOAS back then at that point. It was all Huni, and he just destroys him with it. And we get to game 5, and it's Yumi and Mitch casting it. And I was like really happy with the cast, and everything was going great. I was like, this series is absolutely insane. We show a pip of Madison Square Garden also watching the final. Like, it's just packed in there. We hear numbers of like 1 million Western viewers. And we go into the game 5. And Fnatic just gamble on a early to mid game comp, even though all the games
Was
had
that the
gone
Annie
pretty
Rumble?
late. It was the Annie Rumble one, and we've been like, no, what's happening? Every game has gone late. You need to draft scaling, but they play that comp, they get ahead, and we managed to make a call saying, now's the turning point where while Fnatic is ahead, if they have to win this next fight, or Origin will outscale them. Peg is on Azir, Sven is on a late game carry. Like, it's getting to the point where Origin will win. And just as we say that, like 10 seconds later, from what I remember, Yellow Star flashes over the wall
Wraith camp to mid lane.
at the Wraith camp,
Yep.
smacks the tippers into the face of Xpeke. They kill Xpeke, they win the fight, and they finish the game. Just when we had said, like, this fight, lose this and you're probably done, Fnatic, and then they win, and obviously they go to Worlds with Origin, they get top 2. Like, that final in itself, in terms of hype, stories, also actually in terms of the level these teams performed at, I think was absolutely insane. And I guess 2015 had really memorable finals.
And see, the thing is I remember as a viewer watching that, I didn't buy into OG being able to take down Fnatic. And then they basically perfect gamed them game 1. They had like insane
that was
macro.
true.
I like didn't believe it. I was like, this is like BS. Like, what are the casters talking about? There's like no way Fnatic are unstoppable. Then obviously the rest of the games weren't nearly as clean, but when OG just like bam, just like straight up had shown their prep, destroyed Fnatic in that game 1, I was like, oh no.
And it was
like,
the
3-0 OG.
It was the
It was
18-0
the 18-0 Fnatic season. So that's obviously why no one believed.
Yeah.
Ah, what
Insane.
a final.
What was your favorite memory, Drakos? Because you were watching for longer, potentially longer than you've been casting. It's about 50-50 now.
Yeah, it's
but
like 50-50. Oh man, it's really hard. I mean, I was watching for like the Faker Zed outplay, right, which was insane. And like I didn't even fully grasp like 100% what was going down in that game, and that was like a really insane moment. But from EU specifically, God, I really hold on to that first game, because that game, like that first perfect game in that final, was one of the most memorable moments for me. I think it's hard. It's actually really hard.
See, the thing is, you got to think about it, because like I also go back to the Fnatic Gambit final of 2013 summer. Now, the reason I go back to that is
Spring.
spring. Sorry. The reason I go back to that was I was really excited about Gambit, they had transitioned from Moscow 5. I had been casting a lot of them in the previous year in 2012 in like the open circuit and 4PLs and DreamHacks and whatnot, and really had a lot of fun casting the players. And the Fnatic organization goes way, way, way back in my Call of Duty days. They were the best like team, and I was a fan of their Call of Duty squad. They had a guy named Stevie who was like the best player. So I was like, holy crap, like there's this one league that I got to cast, and one of my big breaks was casting Diamond Prox, playing Jungle Jin Zhao in 2012 for the first time on stream, and he lost. They lost playing Jungle Jin Zhao on some random team in a 4PL monthly. And then I got to do the final, my first LCS final with D-Man. And, Alex Sitch, Diamond, Genja, just the legacy players that were super mega ultra stars back in the day. And that just like stuck with me.
It's
that feeling.
It's so weird because I went through this phase as a fan where like when people were talking about stars, everyone references M5, right? And I was a Shushay fan. And so there was this awkward moment where EU
Wait,
League of Legends
season 1 or season 2?
Season 1, season 2 era,
Oh,
like
season
both.
2.
So this is the guy that like a friend at some point when I was watching the game told me like this was like the guy to watch.
Yeah.
So like I believed him wholeheartedly and I watched Shushay. And then when like by the time Dragonborns came around or whatever, I was like, oh
You have to go back.
There's so few viewers who know Shushay, I think.
At the end of 2012, the EU LCS was going to happen. And there was a qualifying tournament that happened in Warsaw, Poland, which is where he was playing. Okay. And Bjergsen was too young to compete. So you're playing with a different mid laner. And there was two magical moments that came from this event. Now, the first and foremost was the Copenhagen Wolves qualifying. And in the post-game interview with Carmack, talking to Deficio on stage, and so how do you feel? You just qualified for the LCS. And I quote Deficio, yeah, well, we couldn't play with Bjergsen. Bjergsen's kind of our star player, and he said we weren't going to make it. So, fuck you, Bjergsen. Live on broadcast, and then he realizes, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
and then his whole face just kind of goes.
I felt real bad.
Then the second thing was Dragonborns, which was led by Shushay. They qualify, and Shushay and Hosan do a body slam because he was playing like AP Gragas or whatever at the time. And Hosan is this tiny little guy. Shushay is a pretty big dude. He like cosplay Gragas by taking his t-shirt off. And he gives him a body slam. Hosan hits the ground, like KO. And you just hear D-Man burst out laughing. He cannot contain himself. You can hear the tears running down his face. But that qualified tournament was one of the friends. I shared a room with Freak, actually. He flew out to cast the event, and he and I shared a
that was your trial?
That was my trial. That was, if I didn't do well at that event, I wouldn't have been hired for the LCS. And luckily, I managed to impress the right people.
Nice, dude.
There you go.
So there's some golden oldies.
I'm trying to think about some big player moments of like a player entering where we went like, wow, that was insane. And Perks joining in 2016.
First was definitely nutty.
Yeah.
With G2. When we looked at the G2 lineup and they'd made changes already since they qualified. And it was hard to get really excited about it. It was like, they bring in Trick.
Also because the Gamers 2 roster that had attempted to qualify had failed like 3 times.
Yeah, exactly.
So they eventually made it in. And we were just like, okay, you're finally here, but I'm not
And then
hype
exactly,
yet.
like they get Trick, who wasn't a very known Korean player at all. They have this 17-year-old mid laner in Perks, and they have Hybrid, the support.
Emperor, by the way, at this point in his career has been like
definitely gone downhill,
touring minor regions after.
And
Kick
is top lane. Former jungler Kikis was top lane. Yep. So you look at that lineup on paper and you go like, yeah, this is not gonna do that much. But like from week 1. It was just like the Perks and Trick
show. Yep.
Pick assassins and Graves jungle and whatever and just like destroy everyone. And we were just like, what? Like, this is actually insane. And I think within like a week or two, we were on the Perks and Trick hype train.
Yep.
And they rode it all the way to the final. They beat Origin, the old guys, on Origin's side. Fnatic did not make the final. And it was just like, okay, we got some new star players here. And G2 obviously ended up winning, 4 in a row, and Perks won all of them. So that was definitely a new star being born right there that we did not expect to look that good.
And at the same era, you talked about the Fnatic Origin, and that was the Origin went from Challenger to World semifinals. And then the following year was World semifinals to relegation.
Yeah.
And Roccat Origin, dude.
Oh
Roccat
my God.
Origin.
Oh.
The Teleclown Wars Both teams were 0-13, if I recall correctly. We had a 2-group system, best of 2s, and
Somebody had to win.
somebody had to win. But not only did one team absolutely have to win and break the 13-game losing streak, if I recall correctly, but Nahyun had been on like a 27 or 28.
He never won a competitive game.
Because he had lost every single game that he played in the LSPL before coming to EU LCS, and then he lost every single game in EU LCS. And after an 80-minute game where I don't know how many inhibitors were killed.
The first one, yeah.
Nobody
Oh
could kill.
my God.
Nobody could beat one another. We actually had like clown hats and confetti, and you know we went a bit.
I was ready. That was great.
Dude, the best part when I think back, or one of the best part was the jungler on Rocket was Maxlore. Like, how much has changed for him? Because in that game, he picks Lee Sin.
Hang on, was that with Hyonan and Wadid as well? Were they on Rocket yet or not?
No. That
Not
was
yet.
Oh.
I can't remember. I'll have to.
You have to go find the old roster.
I gotta
but
look up the roster.
Rock. Because the thing is, Rocket changed the roster so much.
I just remember Maxlore picks Lee Sin. And I'm like, oh, okay, if you pick Lee Sin now, you need to make something happen. And it took him 47 minutes to secure the first kill for his team. And he did nothing. He just ran around the river again and again and again. I was just like, this is so unbelievable to watch. I am fairly certain we had like 2 or 3 kills by like 50 minutes in that
was
game.
an atrocious game of League of
It
Legends.
was the worst competitive game of League of Legends I've seen in Europe.
Steelback and Raze.
Oh, Raze.
That's Who
was their top laner?
Parang.
Oh, that was the dude who could only play Echo. That guy was sick.
Yeah.
I liked that guy.
Who's the mid laner?
Betsy.
Hey,
Betsy, okay,
there
yeah.
you go.
Betsy.
Back in the day. Back in the day. I have an off game memory, which I really remember. I don't know why I'm going like legacy. I guess we're talking history. But 2013 summer, I think we opened week 1 in DreamHack in Sweden.
Yes.
And then we immediately flew to Moscow to Russia.
For week 2.
And we did a show in Moscow in a cinema. Excuse me. And it was hot as balls. It was so hot. It was uncomfortable. We were sweating. It was terrible. And the caster setup actually wasn't too different to this desk. But what we had was in a small space, the analyst desk area was facing a camera, and then the camera would rotate, and then the caster would then face the analyst. So we'd be looking at each other. Anyways, at the end of a game, who was RNA playing for? Was it Alternate? I think in summer back then. I think it was Alternate Attacks. They just won a game. RNA, we want to interview him. He comes upstairs. Myself and Dima were casting, and then on the analyst area was Joe Miller and Jason Kaplan. Now, it was so hot that in order to deal with the heat, we took our shoes, socks, and pants off, and we cast in our underwear and our shirts. Okay, so we just sat like this, and we just had everything above the table, just shirts, tie, jacket, but no pants or jeans on. Aranea gets up, he sees Joe Miller and Jason Kaplan and us sitting with like nothing on, and he just drops his pants. No questions asked, no context given. He's just like, oh, this is what's happening? He undoes his belt, drops his jeans.
This man understands the dress code,
and
is
then
what you're
he
telling
sits
me.
in between Joe and Jason, does the entire interview, and then Jason Kaplan tried to do a couple of jokes about, he'd trip over his pants, or like he tried to do a few like subtle jokes, and we were all a little bit cringing at, like, no, dude, don't give it away.
Let go, man.
But I just fondly remember Aranea going like, this is the plan, I'm on board.
One of the worst events, by the way. I have so many stories from that trip to Moscow. I'm not even sure if half of them are suited for this podcast.
You can
But
save him for another time.
I can definitely say that we could hear the casters in the first couple of
Oh
games.
my God.
But their casters were in Russian, so we obviously didn't know what they were saying. But I think we were playing Gambit or something. And we were like, hang on, this needs to change. That wasn't good.
Esports was loose back then. It was super loose. All right, Deficio, we have time for one more memory before we start talking about the upcoming week. Is there anything that...
Yes, I have one. I said
Favorite
Perks
team?
before. Well, I was going to say another player.
Okay.
Caps joining the LCS. And us actually kind of making people mad at him and us
Yeah.
in the very first week or two he played. Because when Caps joined the LCS in 2017 spring, we had been told by the other players that this guy was like insane. Like we are talking a level above almost every player in Europe in terms of just pure mechanics.
Faker.
A bit like Faker when
But
he
younger.
joined.
Yeah.
But younger.
And Faker was already there. And the pro players at the time called him Baby Faker when they talked to us.
It's true.
So we get to cast the first game, and it's a BO3 between, I think, Fnatic and G2.
It was, yeah.
And he solo kills Perks. You know, the famous rise
Dramatically.
under the turret where he's like almost dead, but then he flashes and snares him on the turret. And because we felt like this would be a good opportunity to introduce Baby Faker. He just killed Perks, the best mid laner in Europe. We obviously say it. We're like, oh, Baby Faker. We never give the context that the pro players call him this at first. We just call him Baby Faker.
Yep.
And everything in that Reddit thread after was just people being mad that we called him Baby Faker. How dare we compare Caps to Faker, and we're overdoing it, we're killing the narrative, all these kind of things. And obviously, it was a bit of a meme, but then it ended up being, pretty dumb. It was just when I look back at it, like we actually took this player who entered the scene looking absolutely fantastic, and we made people mad at us and also kind of mad at him, I think. Because we said Baby Faker, and like we obviously
You should have waited. If he came in a year later, 2 years later, if he came in this year, people would have been like, all right, yeah, fine.
It was too early to obviously call it, but it was a joke on what the pro players called him, but we never said that. We just called him
We
Baby
didn't give enough
Faker.
context for it to make sense.
So it ended up just being bad. But Caps joining obviously was a big thing, and same with Reckless when he joined back in the day, if you remember. The first split he played was MVP.
It was huge, but also because he had that legacy.
Yeah, he'd already been a player, right?
Vayne player from it wasn't IPL, was it?
IPL 5, yeah.
IPL 5
against
in
WE,
Vegas,
or World
exactly,
Elite.
right? So, he came
He was
in with
a
that
pro,
history.
even though he was a rookie.
He had an established record of being good in the public eye.
Yeah,
Caps had an established record of being good in the professional eye. But pro players...
No one had any
it was at home.
idea.
Nobody knew.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Who is this
Exactly.
kid?
Now people can see it though.
Yes.
And I've even seen people use it. Say,
Yeah. See, we were ahead of the curve.
we tried to do the Teenage Faker one
ahead
that
of
I
the
found
curve.
hilarious.
Yeah, you found hilarious. It died.
I think it was
nobody
funny.
carried
He's
it.
grown up. He's teenage.
We said it in
This
Summer
is-
Split.
This is how you know Deficio's getting old, because he laughs at his own jokes like Teenage Faker and actually has resentment that the rest of us don't laugh with him. So
True.
Yeah.
I think
You are
a great graphic.
You're a bitter old man. All right, speaking of teenage Faker, young adult Faker, Fnatic playing Misfits this Saturday. I think Misfits, I'm going to say surprising me. You were one of the few people, Deficio, who actually predicted them. This is not an opportunity for you to pat yourself on the back, just making it clear that you did believe in them.
What did Trevor Quickshot hit?
yeah, I predicted G2.
Yeah, I predicted a 3-0.
I
3-0. Oh, you like Various?
Yeah, because I thought someone's going to win with a 3-0, and I didn't think it was going to be Misfits.
Dude, I thought there was so many problems in the Misfits camp based on their inability to get better in 3 or 4 weeks of regular season. I also underestimated the patch buff that they were going to get significantly. So I really thought that the problems they had to overcome, and then my underestimation of how much the patch was going to help them, surprised me. But on the same token, the patch helped Misfits and hurt G2.
Oh, yeah, it really hurt
so,
G2.
You have to factor all those things in together. And after all of the talking that we did, especially in the pre-show and ready check, when that first pick Alistair was locked in, you looked at me and grinned, and I just went, yep, I messed up. Misfits are going to win the series. Like, it's just, that's all the signal I need to believe it.
And to be fair, I had a 3-2, so I thought it actually was going to be really close.
Yeah.
Like, game 2 was kind of how I expected most of the games to end up looking, where, G2 were actually able to kind of match a lot of what Misfits did, but they would only be good enough to actually beat them in some of the games, and then they would hard lose early game in some of the other ones. But obviously, when Misfits won that game 2, where for the first time, or one of the first times all split, they actually came back from a deficit, and they played pretty cleanly around Baron in that second game from behind, kind of always winning fights by like 1 kill here and then forcing G2 back, and they got into the late game, and Hans Sama was like dealing 1 million damage. The moment they won that game, I tweeted like, this is a 3-0 now, because if Misfits can actually beat you late game, and they've already shown they could win early game if they draft for that in the first game, G2 are not winning this.
The next test is going to be more difficult because G2 are Fnatic are stronger in late game than G2 have
And early game.
And I just
don't know how Misfits going to match up. But if there was any team that could take Fnatic down, I think it is Misfits. They did it last year. I think this is a team that prepares very well. And look at how they come into best of fives. Look at the creative solutions that this organization has done, even with different players last year and this year, when they come into those best of series. How the hell do you prepare for Whippo, Soaz, Reckless, and what positions they're going to play?
Also, let's just be clear here. They picked Malzahar twice.
For the Cooks.
Dude, Samsung
Caps
Galaxy
is going to eat him.
Samsung
breakfast.
Samsung Galaxy won the world championships with a mid laner that played Malzahar, etc. Like control mage, boring. If you can win a world championship with a weaker mid laner, then Misfits can take down Fnatic with a weak.
Okay, but Crown versus what was Crown versus Faker, right?
Yes.
It's very different from Senkux versus Caps, dude.
We call him
it's the EU
Teenage
equivalent.
Faker.
Teenage
It's
Faker
the
now.
EU equivalent. I mean, it's Teenage Crown versus Teenage
It's actually,
Faker.
It's not.
the comparison actually worked.
Does it really work? Because Crown was like really good for a while.
Yeah, but he wasn't that world championship. Like Crown lost almost every lane, which is why he had to
Hey,
pick
you
Malzahar.
know who else loses lane a lot, especially in the second half of the summer splits?
I mean, the comparison actually works in terms of what their role is on the
And that's
team.
that's why I believe it. That's
All
why.
right, but here's my concern, right? For Misfits is that for the first 4 weeks they looked unstoppable, right? They were a beautiful, wonderful team, and they looked very much like they looked against G2, where they looked almost infallible outside of some very stupid aggressive decision making, we could say, in game 3 for sure. Definitely risked throwing a few times.
I mean, they were like, we won this game already.
yeah.
And then the second crack started to show it all. They just immediately nosedived, like hard nosedived. And so I'm worried now about how strong this Misfits lineup actually is going to be relative to Fnatic. And if they can't just run over Fnatic in the early game, like we did see them do pretty consistently against G2, right? Are they just going to collapse in the same way again?
It's going to be, obviously, it's going to be way harder. One of the big reasons is Fnatic are not getting hurt by this patch.
Nope.
Like the Tam Kench nerf was really
That's
bad
what these
for what
most
did.
played.
Hylissang Tam Kench?
Yeah.
Not really.
You're
mate.
actually excited if you're a Fnatic fan that Hylissang is not allowed to play
You
Tom
are,
Ken.
yeah, exactly. So, like Alistar, Pike, these kind of things. Well, hello, I have Hylissang on my team.
So the two players or the two lanes that I'm going to be watching most, first and foremost, can Alfari do to Soaz or Whippo what he did to Wonder? Because that
was
was brutal. Like, I mean, Wonder walked away with like pie on his face.
rest in peace.
And secondly, can Hans Summer undo some of the can Hans Summer like step up to Reckless as well in the bottom lane the way he smashed
You don't even know
Shadow
it's
when he did?
Reckless.
We don't know, but I mean we can assume Reckless will play at least a game.
Sure.
That's my guess, right? And I would love it if in that game Hans Summer steps up, is like, I'm gonna go Draven again and just do Draven things. Because that is an exciting matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we have to expect it's Reckless now that it is almost only 80 carries being picked.
That's
bot
why
lane.
I think it.
So if Reckless is playing and he's picking Ezreal and they're giving Pike to Hylissang and the target is to go mid lane for Fnatic, which has been the case for a lot of it. There is openings for Misfits if they're actually able to play around that. If Senkux is able to play defensive without falling too far behind and then using Max Law to get bot lane ahead, because this is the thing, like Hylissang overextends in lane a lot. If you have an aggressive support and you have a ganking jungler, like you can punish that bot lane. It was one of the problems I had when I played with Whippo, was that he would be with Hylissang running in your face so that you could actually go down and kill them. So I see this setup where Misfits is going to try and focus on two things, which is actually kind of the same as against G2.
Yep.
You need to protect your mid laner to make sure that the enemy mid lane doesn't get really far ahead, and you need to get your own bot lane ahead. Like, it's kind of protect mid, go aggressive bot.
Yeah, but okay. So to me, Fnatic is just, as you weigh, pretty much a super version of G2, right? In the sense that I think Perkz is a fantastic laner, but if anyone's going to solo kill, I expect that more from Caps, like to put that amount of pressure down. Also, in terms of roaming support, if Fnatic doesn't want to play through bottom, Hylissang will live mid lane. That man will not hesitate to live there. The last thing, this is the thing that scares me the most, is Alfari built so many solo advantages, which you cannot in any way rely on as Misfits, right? The solo kills, the individual contributions that he gave to the team, the amount of pressure that he relieved from the rest of the Misfits lineup by just solo killing in match duration of solo killed, by like winning out, by consistently having pressure in lanes where you might not have expected to, roaming mid. Like, Alfaro was a house for that team, and I just don't see Soaz giving up any of the same advantages as Wonder. Now, he might not have the same highs that Wonder could have had if that Gangplank had
I get what you mean, right? You can't bank on it.
But I think it was only game 1 where that solo advantage advantage was really meaningful. Like game 2,
I get what you mean, meaningful. Like he still got solo kills in game 2, but it didn't have the same impact.
it didn't have the same impact, right? Like the team fell behind and they had to team fight their way out. And game 3 was all about Draven just being like 10 million.
Yep.
zero,
Yeah,
you
game.
know?
I mean, game 3 is game 3, right?
So game 1, obviously, I agree that was a huge benefit that he got those solo advantages, but they still got bot lane turret.
Yeah.
And Senkooks played the tank TF and went just like even in CS against Perks. So I just think for Misfits, like there is this world where Fnatic are trying to get caps ahead, that they actually do expose themselves in the side lanes and that can get punished. But I think it requires an MVP performance from Maxlore specifically, because the lanes will not get hit on their own. We're not going to get the EUphoria solo kill. We're not going to get 2v2 kills bot, in my opinion. We need Maxlore and at some point Senkooks to go with them. Like Senkooks showed, he plays TF and he showed Malzahar.
And we know he plays Asol.
I mean, he's played that in the past, right? So it was very clear we don't want to try and camp mid lane strategy.
Yeah.
It was we want Senkooks to go somewhere else and be.
Can they win? And what percentage chance, boys?
Oh my god, it's just like
I love it. I love it.
This is the closest I get to try casting with 2 play-by-plays. It's wonderful.
I think I'm not on 3-0 Fnatic. Fnatic will win, is my prediction, but I don't know. I'm on 70-30.
See,
Remember last year that Reckless called
think-
3-1 the Cowards prediction.
I think Misfits can take down Fnatic, and I think last year Misfits beat Fnatic in a semi-final. I think Misfits show up in playoffs, and I think Maxlore is
that
a
was
player.
so different.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
We've gone down memory lane. Like I just want to quickly talk on that. Talk about that. Like the weakness of Fnatic last year was when teams hard camped mid.
Yes.
And when they had Power
they
Weevil and
collapsed.
Misfits, you know, they were like, oh, we will hard camp mid with him and Maxlore, and they actually managed to do it. And Fnatic just like crashed.
The main thing for me is Misfits found a weakness in their opponent team,
Very
which they
true.
exploited.
Very true.
Misfits found a weakness in the G2 team, which they exploited.
So did the Riot Bounce
I
team,
think
by the way.
when you look at Misfits and you give them a lot of time to prep, I didn't believe going into the quarterfinals they were going to be able to do it. I regret not believing in them.
Now you got to shift.
And I think
You gotta
I think they're
compensate.
going to shift. I think
But game 1 and 3.
they gotta. I think
1
they're
and
gonna-
3 mid game was not clean snowballs. That scares me a bit.
I mean, I think you have every right to be scared.
Yes.
I do think
But
that
you can
after,
see a realm of possibility.
After
where-
quarterfinals,
I can see the
after
possibility.
quarterfinals,
Yeah.
this went from like a 90-10 to like for me like a 60-40. I would even go so far. as to
Sure.
say.
Okay. I think I'm on 70.
we don't have to lock our votes here, right? Because
We don't.
No.
I'm right now looking at a 3-1, but I'm not done at all
Okay.
looking at the teams. Because I think that, like, Fnatic, the last couple of weeks, yes, they got first place, but that was not, extremely, clean games they played. There was a lot of scrappiness. Maybe they were, as a team, they were kind of like trying to get used to Reckless again, whatever
That's
it was.
why I give Misfits a shot here.
There are so many, like, Vitality showed us that if you get ahead early game, and especially if you get ahead early game in the jungle matchup, those lanes can't play aggressive from Fnatic,
This
and your
patch-
jungler shows up.
This patch and play style fits and suits the 9-0 undefeated Misfits from the beginning of the splits.
That is true.
And that's where I'm going. So I think I'm
So you're
leaning
going
that way.
Misfits winning?
You're
I
going
think I am.
Misfits.
I think I am.
Okay.
I'm still on the fence. I only have to lock my vote on like Thursday.
All right.
I'm on a
I'm
3-1
not gonna-
Fnatic
I'm
for
not
now,
gonna-
but we'll see.
I'm not going to force you to lock anything just yet. Actually, wait unless we want to do a bet, but we can wait. We can talk about this next.
This invite is going to be
matchup.
sick, though.
Vitality versus Schalke is the next one. Now, this is one of my favorites personally because the clear clash of styles.
Yes.
Right? And these are the absolute best, in my experience, best of 5s to cast because it is so clear for the audience, for the caster, for everyone, what to expect coming in. And when someone goes against the grain here, like Schalke wants to play early game or Vitality goes late game, you get to watch it basically for the first time. And if it works, it's just so nutty.
It's like the rock, paper, scissors series, right?
Yeah.
So if Vitality get an early game lead, they throw rock and Schalke scissors in game 1, that's it, they're wrecked. Game 2, Schalke are able to fend off any of the early plays or hold kick is back and Amazing decides to play League of Legends in the early game and all of a sudden Schalke can win that game. It was not a great series for Amazing in the quarterfinals, but when it mattered and he needed to step up in game 5 of the Jarvan, he did.
Yeah.
I think I expect Vitality to be able to create more opportunities. I just don't know if I can trust them to convert those opportunities to wins cleanly. And that's where I get nervous.
I'm excited for the upset Attila rivalry. A lot. But before we go any deeper in the semifinal, I do have to call in the quarterfinals. This was an incredibly close series, as you already mentioned, and an atrocious series from Ottawamne. And I feel like if Ottawamne had played a little bit better, we might have seen a little bit of different results.
Yeah.
And I think that Schalke, as much as I want to praise them, as much as they absolutely earned that win, I think that there were so many opportunities and circumstances created by them getting free kills on Odo, overextending for whatever reason. I wasn't in the team comps. I can't say why he was where he was. Giving them opportunities that they probably shouldn't have had. That said, Upset had a fantastic series.
Towards the end.
Even at the bigger picture.
And that's the kind of thing you want to see in these high pressure scenarios, especially from a guy who is, who you always kind of wonder how he's going to perform under pressure.
getting solo killed was surprising. Now, admittedly, there was a lot of support for Niski, a lot, especially throughout the games.
Niski
but I still didn't expect, even with gank support, for Nukeduck to be quite literally owned the way that he was. I expect him to be able to deal with that pressure a little more. So that's something I'd like to see a little bit of workaround.
Yeah.
For this series against Vitality.
Did you finish over there? Or?
Yeah, well, here's my question. You've been a huge advocate of Schalke this season. You're the Duck. We made a video about it. You might have seen it. It's musical. It involves this cowbell. So, what did you think of this performance? How did it compare to regular season Schalke for you? Is this an improvement? Is this a downgrade? What weaknesses or strengths did you see that you didn't see before?
I'm just making sure I remember everything in there. I think Schalke's late game was solid, which has kind of been the case during the split as well. I think it heavily benefited them getting upset on a scaling AD carry, so they're not on a clock. Because I don't like Schalke on a timer. Schalke needs to snowball early game and then be really fast. I don't like it because their Barons are still not great. And they play the slow grind when they want to finish games. It's like they take every jungle camp from you. They try and deny you as much farm in side lanes as possible. But it means the enemy AD carry will get to his items, which is what happened with Copy. But because they had a scaling AD carry on Schalke's side at the end, it didn't actually matter too much because Upset could just match what Copy did. And that was a big advantage. So I think Schalke's late game is good. And I like when they get to play all three lanes and they do this slow grind against you as long as they have scaling on their side. Their early game, however, is where I'm concerned, especially against aggressive junglers, because I think Xerxes had the best series he's played all split long. Also the first series, but he played the best.
The best games.
The best games he'd played. And a lot of it was him being an early ganker, especially around mid lane, which was easy, honestly, for him to pull off. And I look at Kikis. Well, Kikis is not necessarily the guy who will permagank your lanes, but he will try and invade your jungler. He's obviously going to do it. If it means, hey, if I go mid lane and kill Nukeduck once, me and Jisuke have free access to go into the enemy jungle, that's obviously then going to be a thing that they're looking to do. And also with Kikis, and I said this on PGL, he's the kind of player I don't want to face in a best of 5 just because of the unpredictable nature of how he plays. And, I mean, in the past, he's brought out all these different things. We don't know if he's going to do that now, but I get a little bit scared if I'm Schalke and I look at the key person on Vitality's side being a player who has no fear, who wants to be aggressive in the early game, and potentially could be really difficult to deal with in a best of 5.
It's really difficult because it's probably one of the weakest individual members of Schalke, regardless of what else Amazing contributes to the team. But in terms of individual mechanics, Amazing's probably one of the weakest versus one of the strongest in terms of early game threats on the side of Vitality. This is the guy usually building them advantages, and Amazing's usually the guy sitting back, playing for the team, playing more defensively. So it does feel like Kikis is just going to dictate everything that happens in the early game.
But that's obviously
better or worse, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That can backfire, right? Yeah. If Vitality try and draft a bit of scaling on their side as well, and Kikis tries to play aggressive in the early game, you can punish him for sure. And because it's not just Kikis alone, it's what the team does with Kikis that's so strong. And then suddenly Schalke wins you. If Schalke goes even in the early game, it's 100% in their favor.
Go back to the tiebreaker day where Vitality and Schalke opened that day up. And we had 30 minutes of stalemate, pretty close, pretty clean plays. And I mean, there was one or two bold invades from Kikis that I remember that were potentially very, very risky. And they weren't punished as hard as
Cabo didn't move down when he did.
But I look at moments like that and I think to myself, what if it doesn't go well? What if Kikis is going forward and Vitality played through Kikis recently a lot, Jizuke's Galio and using that to the side lanes and whatnot, trying to back up and play around Kikis. It has that double-edged nature of where it can backfire. But for me, yes, Kikis is the guy that starts the play. How amazing and Schalke respond determines who wins in my mind, because if they're prepared for it and ready and they have either a cross map available or they can punish it, you can play around that style and respond. I think Schalke have an edge if they're ready and if they read it.
I mean, and that's the thing, right? I think Schalke, they just play the game differently. They try and like really focus a lot more on, again, like playing these multiple lanes, and like they would call themselves a macro team, I guess, in that regard. But as I said before here, like if they go even in the early game, it's 100% in their favor. I don't mean that they're necessarily going to win the game. I just mean they're past the biggest weakness, which is the early game. So that is obviously good. I think though Vitality's team fighting has gotten better. It was a criticism I had for them last split. One was Barons. Obviously we were like, Baron setups are terrible, and you're just 50-50ing every Baron. The setups are still a bit shaky, but they're getting better. But then the actual team fighting, I think Attila has done a lot better in team fighting. He's become a big threat for the team. And as long as they have Engage, that's the thing. As long as they bring Engage with them, they can actually team fight very well because they're all on the same page. They're quick to pull the trigger and jump you. The moment they don't bring Engage and they have to actually set up the fight like slowly, to me, it doesn't work. Jack Troll just walks in on his own at some point, or Kikis tries to flank and dies. Like that doesn't work for me. So I have questions in terms of draft there, but I actually think late game, in terms of pure team fighting, it's going to be pretty even between the teams. And it's not just going to be Schalke favored, which is why I look at Vitality as the favorites in the series.
Ooh, give me a percentage. I'll take Trevor's thing.
60-40 Vitality.
Ooh, still close though.
I mean, I'm definitely not. The tiebreaker.
Because there's also, you say Engage is like crucial, but there's so much Engage in the meta. I mean,
it's not hard to find.
Well, even if you step back, like we talked a lot about the teams and sort of play styles and stuff, but the individual stories coming into this is amazing as well. You know, a rivalry that has grown. It's not really super in the public eye, but it's a little bit more on the production side. But, you know, Upset versus Attila, the two rookie AD carries that came in the split. Last split, it was Attila standing above Upset, laughing his ass off all the way through to the third place match.
Yeah, I wrote an article about Upset, and then he choked, and then Attila was like yelling at me like, what
now,
are you doing?
Upset has definitely found a bit more groove, found a bit more comfort on stage, and the two guys are willing to throw a little bit of banter back and forth. We heard Amazing talking about Vitality, Yamato talking about Schalke, and, you know, throwing some shade, you know, talking about attitudes. But even if you just look at the matchup, Amazing versus Kikis, these are guys that have been playing for 6, 7, 8 years, I think. I think Kikis and Amazing go back to season 1, season 2 days. And they're still competitive. They're now in the top 4 of Europe in the 2018 season. Like, it's mind-blowing to think about it. I remember Acer Amazing, I think, playing on
That's
Team
all
Acer,
I ever knew him as.
Right? Back in season 1. And you've got this old man, reactive, leader, emotional style in Amazing. And then you've got the egocentric, I'm going to win everything, young, hungry Kikis. Like, you know, there's
He's not even that young. He's
no, exactly,
right?
Yeah. But you know what I mean? And that like style. And then one last one that I want to look at. The year of Nuke Duck taking on the Italian Stallion. Right? Like bragging rights for mid laners.
The best part is Nuke Duck hasn't looked like the center of the team, and the Italian Stallion has not been popping off this season.
Exactly.
So it's like the wounded Stallion, and like we may have mislabeled the calendar. It might have needed to say the year of Upset.
It was week 1 to 8 of Nuke Duck.
Yes.
For now.
The weeks.
Now it's
the 2 months of Nuke Duck, and now
2 months of the weekend of Nuke Duck.
If both teams play at their absolute best, can Schalke survive enough early game to win late game? Because the thing is that they play.
What is the absolute best? It's so hard.
Like, when you think of their ceilings, when you think of their best.
I think Vitality played close to their best the last couple of weeks, which is why they got that second place.
Yep.
And I hope that same Vitality shows up in this semifinal. Sometimes when teams have an extra week to prep, it ends up becoming a curse because it's hard for them sometimes to get proper practice the first week because you know you're not actually playing that weekend. But there's no excuse. You got to watch 5 games of Schalke.
Yep.
5 pick and ban phases, and they've only had a week then to try and change that. You've had 2 weeks. Like, I hope Vitality come in insanely prepared.
I want to see as well, because not only for Vitality is this shot in finals and whatnot, but if you assume that Fnatic and Vitality win, Vitality, the fact they place 4th, have the biggest foot in the door in qualifying to the World Championships on championship points.
They're guaranteed to go to Worlds if they make final against Fnatic.
Second or
Guaranteed.
third, if they take second or third on championship points with Fnatic, they go on champ points.
As long as they go with Fnatic, I believe it's guaranteed. Otherwise, the only way they miss it now if they get fourth
Also,
place.
Fnatic versus Vitality final when Fnatic were the ones saying Vitality's the only team we don't want to play last season.
Yeah, you said Misfits had the best chance of beating Fnatic. I'd say Vitality.
Yeah, that's what hypes me up, dude.
Good Vitality.
I just don't know. I don't know if I trust Vitality to prep well enough to take down multi.
Flaming the tomato cannon.
Yeah, I think
Risotto onion.
Misfits and the support staff are more adept and equipped at preparing for the potential unknown of a 6-man roster than Potato Famine could be. And Tomato Canyon, you can pick a different shirt maybe, but I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean,
That's the part we clip out and put as our teaser.
That's the part right there. Oh man, yeah. Misfits do have the track record in the history there. That's for sure going for them. One last run through soft predictions. The playoff or the prediction game is afoot at the moment, so I won't make you guys lock anything else because you guys would just waffle on me later, anyways. So, Vitality, Schalke.
3-2 Vitality.
He leaves the train. The conductor has left the train.
Hey, the train can still keep going,
Yeah, without a conductor.
It can, yeah.
Into the mountain.
Sure, we'll see what
To
happens.
crash and burn.
We'll see what happens.
My head is telling me
Don't
that
trust your head. Trust your feelings.
Vitality should be able to win the series. However, I can't shake the feeling that I think they're going to choke under pressure and Schalke will step up.
Ooh.
I think Schalke
Are you the new
got
conductor?
a rude awakening in quarterfinals, and I think Schalke are going to beat Vitality.
You're the new conductor of the train.
3-1.
Congrats.
I'm on board.
3-0?
I think
If
I
Vitality
hate to
choke it,
say
you can
this.
go
I hate-
3-0 here.
No, I think a 3-1. I think Kickers can win one game,
And then they
but
choke.
I think so.
Interesting.
I think
think so.
I'm hoping for 5 games. I'm going to give it to Vitality. I'm with Deficio on this one. That was a messy series from Schalke. A week is not a lot of time.
So we have left the train. Trevor has jumped.
Trevor
headfirst
is the
into
conductor.
it.
I have. I look
And
at
we
the
don't know if
10-1
you're hitting a mountain or
I
not.
look at the 10-1 Schalke that had a messy week 9 and tiebreaker and quarterfinal, and I think they'll go back to the.
That's a
I
lot
can't-
of messiness right there.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. A big look at our history. A lot of personal stories shared in the history of the
Man, if
EU
someone
LCS.
really do not care about personal caster stories, the first 30 minutes are going to be so boring. I'm
And
like,
that,
yeah,
ladies
that's
and gentlemen, is
another
why we have
one.
timestamps, which I'm now telling you at the end after you've presumably watched all the stories that you weren't that excited about. So hopefully...
We can cut so that you actually get to see this at first. It's just you randomly saying timestamps and then wait to hear.
Don't forget there are timestamps. As Trevor's like, yeah, then we were sitting there pantsless on the stage. It's like, guys, reminder, there are timestamps. You can skip this if you don't want to hear about Trevor being pantsless. It's always an option, folks. Until then, Trevor, thank you for joining us.
We don't have a bet now.
Oh, do we
Last time we didn't have a bet, people flamed us.
That's true. We need a bet.
We need to...
Terrible time to throw it in.
No, because now we cut.
Okay.
And then we come back.
We can lean back.
Well, friends, we almost left without a bet. But like always, we forgot and then remembered and then brainstormed for 10 minutes behind the scenes to think of a bet on the fly. You'd think we'd plan this ahead of time, it being our 11th episode and all, but you'd be surprised at how bad we are sometimes.
It is very true.
But we have finally found a bet. Now these guys are going to be betting on Schalke versus Vitality this week. Trevor on the side of Schalke, Deficio on the side of Vitality. Now, Trevor, if he wins,
Yes.
gets to be the conductor, gets to take everything from Deficio.
Yes, I will in Reddit check, show up, in our little recording, and I will personally hand over the Nuke Duck Hype Train conductor
And
thing
publicly apologize.
and apologize to Trevor
Yeah.
and of course Nuke Duck for leaving the Hype Train in the first place, and give it to Trev so he can be
The official
the
conductor.
official conductor of the Schalke and Nuke Duck Hype
It's
Train.
especially special because of just how good Nuke Duck has been playing this year, and I have a legacy of.
And I started that Hype
of,
Train.
of questioning and
I
discussing.
still
Yeah,
believe
you've
in
been
you,
very
Nuke Duck.
impressed.
I don't believe in
the
your team.
inverse, of course, if Vitality win, I then need to do a formal public apology to you as well as Yamato
And Yamato Cannon, because you
For-
just flamed him before.
for doubting their ability to adapt and prep and get in there.
Simple, classic.
Also, I will remove the conductor stuff from
Okay.
Trevor
Got it.
after he's.
Because I am officially
You are not
adopting the
allowed
conductor.
to even be looked at as a potential conductor.
Got it.
of a
And
hype
you
train.
guys have to be, let's be clear here, because people at home are going to be like, how does this compare to making a music video or dancing around like a duck. And the
hard to
reason
beat.
is one, it is hard to beat, folks. We can't music video every time. It takes a lot of effort. But you guys have to really grovel here. Like, I want to be convinced that you are as sorry as you ever could have been. I want this to be like...
I will take a little bit of inspiration from the Deficio Kasing interview of Spring Split.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good. I like
And,
that.
That's
I
what the
think,
people wanna hear.
go back to that, Euphoria episode in bit. It was a good one. But I think that would be the inspiration, really extreme, public apology, really own the
And
mistake.
it's gonna be in Reddit check.
Really own
We
the
want
mistake.
to try and put it in Reddit check.
Yes.
We'll get it.
There's a bunch of producers who need to say yes.
Yeah.
Worst case,
We
it goes
don't
on
have the
social
authority
media.
to make that decision,
It
but
can
we're
go on
making
social
that
media,
decision,
worst
folks. All right, cool. Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Well, there's our bet. Once again, this has been the Euphoria podcast. It's available on a bunch of different stuff, but I told you that at the start. We're not going to do it again because Deficio will call this the worst outro ever. So
It's
instead,
currently the third worst outro.
third worst outro. You heard it here, folks. Well, thank you for listening to episode 11, also known as the episode with the third worst outro. We'll see you guys next week. And thanks, Trevor, once again.
My pleasure.
Pro player.